Hello, everybody. Welcome to the TechRaptor Podcast. I'm Robert Scarpanito, your features editor.
And Rod, editor-in-chief.
Privileged Doggett, site founder.
And we have our
Austin
guest.
Soother. Oh, well, yeah, that's me. Austin Soother, resident goblin, I guess.
Yeah.
Resident Goblin. All he's been doing is playing Baldur's Gate. As a goblin, he's found a way to play as a goblin, which is...
He's embodying a goblin in real life right now, also.
He always
In
is.
my goblin cave right now.
He
We
always
like to
is.
keep it dark,
You're
my
right.
kind.
Yes.
He's actually a goblin in real life and RPing as a normal dude in Baldur's Gate. So he can feel like a human.
Just so you can kind of feel it.
Yeah.
Get
He's
to
like
taste it.
he's just a human fighter.
Yeah.
To be a dude.
The most basic.
But it's really novel for him, though, so that's kind of nice.
Yes.
Today, on this episode, we're going to dive into kind of the intersection between time and money and games, because I think that's a debate that comes up a lot in the gaming space, right? Like, is this worth my money? Is it not worth your money? All that sort of stuff. So we're going to get into the nitty gritty because there's all sorts of weird genres and business models and freemium, premium, pay to win, pay to play kind of shit that mucks up the waters in it. I think we're going to try to cover that whole topic as best we can. But before we dive into it, if you would like to support us, it would really help us out if you leave a review on whatever platform you're listening on. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. We promise we'll deliver at least a decent show every week. Entertaining 30% of the time, at least. We can.
There will be some audio for you to listen to.
There will be an
guarantee.
MP3 file you can download every week.
Yes, we can guarantee that.
We can guarantee that. So it would really help out the channel and all of us at TechRaptor if you did. But I think let's kick it off with a pretty, I think the basic and easy way to start here is there's the very, like, you see a lot of dollar per hour kind of a value that people try to assign.
You see that from a bunch of fucking smooth brains, but yeah, go ahead.
Well, yeah, because at the end of the day, we were talking about this pre-podcast too. Like, money to me now is very different to me than money 5 years ago. So, like, a game that was $60 5 years ago, it has a very different feeling than it does for me now. And I know Otten was saying the same thing. Like, I don't think that money is the right indicator of quote unquote value in gaming. Like, I think that value should be the enjoyment more so than how much you spent per hour. And so I've always found that argument to be extremely flawed.
Yeah, I think it depends on where you're at though, kind of thing. Like if we're talking, because I think we naturally come at it from like, oh well, as someone who wants to critique or be critical of a thing, we don't want to bring up money. But if I'm someone that's like, all right, I've got $20 and that's all I have to be a thing, all of a sudden the idea of like, well, if I get a little bit more out of my $20 in terms of hours of being able to entertain myself, that's for that person, that's I think a fair way to go about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If it's like, this is my entertainment budget because I don't have that much money to do it. And me and Rutledge are, well, I think all of us here are pretty lucky that we do not have to make that determination right now. So it's hard to think of it in that way.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, and when you zoom out to like entertainment in general, I mean, you look at $20 that buys you, like one ticket to Barbie or Oppenheimer, or one, maybe like on sale copy of GTA 5, and you're set for life. Like theoretically for life.
You'll be good forever.
yeah, right. And it's like when you look at those, like if you're talking pure, hours of enjoyment.
Yeah.
Like, Barbie and Oppenheimer are great films. They are 2 and 3 hours long, right? Like, yeah.
As a kid, I thought about this a lot, and I wanted to like get the maximum amount of value from my dollar. And obviously, if I played a game that was like really short, I would sell it to GameStop and try and get money for it and try to find something that, offered more value. Of course, they gave me like
try to get money.
Well, yeah, because you get like $10 maybe.
Yeah.
But like now, I mean, obviously, I look at it from a different perspective, like these guys. As a reviewer, it's because I do a lot of reviews. Like I can't talk about it, and I agree with that. But it is something that I do like think about from time to time. Like
So to tap into like gaming trends, right, from the past, I would say decade to 2 decades, right? There was a while that we all lived through where the Ubisoft open world checklist was like the game, right? Like that was the way to play video games. The more feathers you can collect, the better the video game is, right?
That's right.
And that directly correlates to just hours played, right? How many hours of stuff can you do in here? And I think there's been a more recent trend of people kind of pulling away from those huge open world games. Like, they just don't have as much time. They don't really find the inspiration to go through all that, right? Um, so I'm curious how you all feel about the way, like, that's technically less hours for my dollar, but the value of those hours, I think some people value them differently, right? Even though it's like technically less, like
I made
quantity.
it like 25 hours into Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and I was like, "Fuck this!
Hmm.
There is too
You
much."
were only like a quarter of the way in.
I know, and I was already bored because it was just repetition over and over again.
Yeah.
And so
When I was talking about on a pod long ago about the new Horizon game, it was the same thing. I remember, well, if we're talking like 10, 15 years ago, even like a long open world game was like, oh, this is like 40 to 50 hours. That's a long game. Now they're like 100 hours.
Yeah.
And stuff like 100 hours before was like, that's basically like just your JRPGs were living in that realm before. And now a ton of AAA games are that. Now it's just like, oh boy, it's definitely getting to be kind of nuts.
Mm.
Too long for so many games. It's kind of like wear out your welcome kind of thing.
yeah,
I would like.
it's usually the open worlds that are like that too, and it's just it's the amount of choice that's given that drives the hours, and less so like impactful gameplay loops. And I think
Mm.
that's, I mean, it's interesting that we talk about Ubisoft and the value that you get there when they're like, oh yeah, our next game's going to be like 20 hours, 30 hours. And they're kind of pulling back going, okay, maybe we did too much.
Yeah.
Assassin's Creed Odyssey was kind of the same way for me. I really enjoyed it, but like I was like 60 hours in and not even close to the end.
Hmm.
And that's tiring.
I think
But
like a strong 8 to 12 hour game can feel just as much as like a really lengthy bloated 60-hour game. And honestly, like if I hear that a game is like 8 to 12 hours or something like that, I mean even 20 for like Assassin's Creed Mirage, I think that's more enticing to me nowadays than like when I was a kid when, oh yeah, this game has like 100 hours worth of content. I'd much rather just play like a really strong focused experience.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, I think at that point, that's like that personal judgment of like quantity versus quality, right? Like
yeah,
for some people, they might prefer that tight, directed 8 to 12 hour experience. I think there was it Game Informer recently, or was it PC?
Somebody
I think,
has recently.
yeah, someone reviewed the Ratchet and Clank PC port recently,
yeah.
right? And I think it was that like $60, but for $60, I don't know if the 10-hour
It's
adventure is
only
worth it.
10, yeah.
Yeah. Which I know that they got some feedback on social media from that.
They got dunked on.
Yeah, because I think that's just one of those things where it's like, okay, yeah, you could spend that same $60 on Skyrim for some reason, and
Dude, you can
get
spend the $60 on like Minecraft and Skyrim and GTA and be set for life. But it's like, I don't want that. Like,
yeah,
uh,
yeah. Because I mean, if you're talking like pure, if all you want is more hours in a video game,
Yeah.
I mean, like that. It's nice to have a lot of hours in a game or potential hours, but it's like there's a point where you want to eat, a 5-star meal instead of a lot of 2-star meals,
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you get something like Tears of the Kingdom where it's just a lot of 5-star meals.
Yeah. So, and that's why it's a
Over and
game of
over.
the generation kind of stuff, Yeah. It's a weird space to be in when you're trying to think of like if you're trying to boil games down to just like content, like just hours of content. I don't think it's
It's so
really
reductive, so weird.
yeah.
These
Such a
days, for me, I
strange-
don't even think about like play length. these days I'm more thinking of like, is this something that I'm going to enjoy for at least 20 hours, or am I going to hit the 20-hour mark and I'm burnt out?
Mm.
Like, and so I'm trying to look for, and it started to be a lot of indies are kind of that where that falls in for me. Dredge earlier this year was about a 20-hour experience if you just beat it and don't 100% it, and that was super enjoyable. And I went back and wanted to play it again, even though it's identical between each playthrough. And stuff like Dave the Diver, I dumped 70 hours into.
Whoa.
You could probably beat it in 25, but I was just trying to do everything because there were so many like little hidden things to find, and honestly, just making sushi and selling it to people is weirdly fun.
Mhm.
I
mean, sushi's good.
Sushi is good.
It's very good. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, but I think like I'm glad that you brought up indies because I think indies also kind of like throw a different wrench into all of this conversation, right? Because it's like, yeah, okay, you can spend $60 for this AAA game, but also Hollow Knight, right? Like Hollow Knight is dozens of hours of content, and it's like $20. You can get it for $10 on sale usually, right? And like,
Yeah.
again, if we're reducing everything to a dollars per hour ratio, indie games tend to give you a lot of bang for your buck, you know?
Yeah. It's a weird, I don't know, so it's such a weird conversation because it's like the only like mainstream, like big entertainment thing you do that this discussion comes up. It's not like I go to the movie theater and there's some small budget movie. I'm like, oh, this is the same price? What? This is bullshit.
You don't think of movies in like dollar per minute
Yeah.
ratio.
Like Oppenheimer's 3 hours. Okay, that's fair. What's this? I went to see Mario movie. It's less than 90 minutes. Bullshit.
Yeah. Like if you do that, is it just like the Lord of the Rings 3 extended edition is objectively the best movie because it's the most
It's pretty long.
it's pretty long, right?
It's like 4.5 hours long.
Mm-hmm.
Worth
Yeah.
every minute.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's why this always feels so weird because there are some pretty short games that if like they were to charge me like the $60, I'm like, all right, like that's
Yeah.
pretty good. Like I liked that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
People would have been mad about it. I would have been like, that's cool. Like it was pretty good, pretty well made, great thing.
Yeah.
So it is such a weird thing because there's, and I guess really what you want out of the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if I'm playing something like, because I'm thinking of short, really good, punchy stuff like Inside or
Stanley Parable.
yeah, Stanley Parable, stuff like that. The entertainment I get of that is it's much more dense of the content that I'm taking in versus some of these open world stuff where it's a lot fluffier.
Yeah.
In terms of how much of this am I just spending running around just to get from A to B,
Mm-hmm.
kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Like I think, I played through Stanley Parable, when that Ultra Deluxe came out, and there's one ending, it's like the skip button ending that's like really fascinating and hilarious and very smart. And it was like, I don't know, maybe 30 minutes, right?
Yeah.
But I remember those 30 minutes far more fondly than that one path I took in Assassin's Creed Odyssey to go to a
Yeah.
thing to fight a dude or something,
Yeah.
And that also probably took about 30 minutes, but
Yeah.
it's the impact that content had, right? That sticks with you more. But then it's weird translating that to like, did my dollar go further with Stanley Parable, or is that just kind of a thing you can't really compare, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you get the feeling it's one of those you just can't really compare because it's
Mhm.
like, just to go back to the realm of movies, we had the clash of Barbie and Oppenheimer, which could not be two different movies. Like it'd be like, which one's the better movie? I would tell someone to shut the fuck up if they asked me that question. Like there's no point in asking.
Which one is the better movie, though?
Does Oppenheimer? But there's no point in answering the question because they're two very different genre movies. I don't know. That's why this is.
Everybody just has
so weird.
everybody has their own concept of money. Everyone has
Yeah.
their own concept of enjoyment, and like I think everybody also has like a time to enjoyment ratio that matters to them. And that's
Mhm.
like that's where you start getting into such subjective territory that like what I think is a good value is going to be different than the other three of you,
Yeah.
guaranteed.
That's true.
And it's going to be the same way around the table. But we use it as this reductive argument for, I don't even understand why we have it as an argument, if we're being completely honest. Like, did you like the game? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Cool.
Mhm.
Like,
What happens if you don't like the game? Do you feel like you were robbed of like $60? Or what if the game was just like straight up bad, jank?
so like Star Trek
say-
2012.
That's most of what Rupp plays, but
Yeah, that's true.
But he likes it.
yeah,
I do.
He enjoys the bad stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we're all maybe biased as people. Like we all, I don't know if you know this, we all work at a gaming outlet, media outlet, where I think all
We
of us
do?
have, I think so. But we probably, I'd be willing to bet most of us have a, like, there's gaming as a hobby, and then there's something beyond that where we really like video games and gaming in general. So I would imagine we might be a little biased, and that even if we buy a game and don't like it, there's that feeling of like, I'm glad I discovered that, as opposed to I feel robbed, right?
That's a good point too.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
I
it's
don't think
just
in the
more
10
of the
years. I don't think in the 10 years I've been doing this that there's been a game that I didn't like and then I felt I wasted my time. Because I guess in our profession, like knowing stuff about games is important. And so having played that game at all, you have a perspective that you can share with readers or whatever. It was interesting. I saw somebody who used to write for Kotaku yesterday tweet, like, and they're no longer at Kotaku, but he was like, I saw this, I don't remember what it was. I saw this tweet, and because I don't have to write about it at Kotaku anymore, I didn't have to go Google it. I didn't have to go research it, and then I didn't have to go write it. And I thought that was very interesting to think about.
Yeah.
But it does put us in kind of that unique position of like, we're actively looking to learn about as many things that come out as possible so that we can feel authoritative on it.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that is an interesting point you make, Scrappy, of like, I don't think if I've come out and been like, I like that, it's not like, but how many hours did I like that? Like, I don't come out thinking like, what was my hours in that? The only time I ever think of that, I was like, fuck, that was longer, fuck, that was shorter than I thought, and then I'm curious. It's never like that's one of the things I consider right away, like, oh, this is a thing.
right.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, like,
Oh.
contrary to popular belief, we don't have some sort of algorithm we throw in, like X number of hours enjoyed divided by total number of hours played equals a review score or something. Like that's just
Yeah.
not.
Yeah, we built a
work.
Microsoft Power
This-
App, and it creates all of our reviews for us.
It's true.
This is one of those. I wonder if part of the reason this comes up so much is that there seems to be this like drive and desire to try to objectively or qualitatively, like, or quantitatively, like, compare games. And their games are so different. Like, if you're comparing something like Civilization to something like Witcher 3, it's like, can't really compare them at all. But what they do share is they take time.
Yes.
They take your time.
Everything
in some
does.
fashion. And so if you can try to say, oh, you'll get this amount of time out of this versus this kind of thing, is that just people's attempts to be like, okay, so that means this is better because if they make more of game better.
Yes.
But
I mean, I think that is, yeah, it's probably, I think you're right that it's the most universal constant among all games that people can compare it to, right? Because like everything else is pretty subjective. Like, do you like the combat in that game? I don't know. That
Yeah.
depends on what games you play. Art style, very subjective, right? But what I think is interesting is both The Witcher and Civilization, or let's say 6 for the sake of argument, both of those could be hundreds of hours of gameplay, right? Civilization for sure,
you could play Civ
thousands.
the rest of your life.
You could, but the thing is, that's the subjective part of it, is like if you are someone who likes crayon strategy, hexagons and like figuring out history and all that stuff, right? Then absolutely you're the person who
Yeah.
can play 1,000 hours of Civilization.
Yeah.
But if you aren't really as into that genre, I mean, there's potentially thousands of hours for you there, but you're probably not going to get
I think
that.
Which is me. I don't enjoy grand strategy. I don't
Yeah,
know why.
To be
I
fair, you
loved
have to
Age of
have a
Empires
pretty
2,
high
but it never
IQ.
translated into anything else.
That's
I
fair.
think that's a good point of like, in a lot of this discussion, where it's kind of assumed of your sort of average like playthrough, but like if I do like say The Witcher 3, I'm like, you know what, I played it through with this build, I'm gonna play it through this next build or this next. I want to see these other choices that I didn't make, or do something totally different, or maybe I liked that thing and I'm gonna new game plus the game, even though it's really just the same game. We don't know if people are doing that for even something we consider a one-off. Like, all right, I finished the story, I finished the game, I'm done with it. For someone, what might be a 20-hour game to me might be a 40, 60-hour game to someone that plays it multiple times.
Right.
Depends on how many
Something like
achievements
that.
there are.
Yeah,
But
if you can
I-
100% it, right?
Yeah, but if we dive too deep into that, though, that's also like you could buy one movie and it's like your favorite fucking movie, and you
Yeah,
watch
that's
it, you know,
that's the whole point that I'm trying to make, is like that's
Yeah.
why it muddies this even more of like,
Yeah.
well, I could, if I'm someone that's like that, I could, what you say is a 60 hours worth of game, I'm like, well, no, actually that's like a few hundred to me. So even you can't even agree on that. Well, how long is the game? Like, if you can't agree on that, then it's like, well, fucking A, dude. Like, how are we gonna do this at all? Like,
Yeah. Like,
Well, I mean,
I-
most of what I play is competitive shooters. So that's like a whole other area to be. I had 800
it's always
hours
so
Counter
toxic
Strike,
all the time.
A lot of
700
those
hours
are
Hunt
free to play,
Showdown.
too.
Like,
yeah,
Well, not
there's a
those
lot.
That's where I get my
specifically.
Yeah, but there are a lot of free to play shooter, or just like a general multiplayer type
Yeah.
games, which I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that's something that is good for us to kind of also dive into, right? In that, most single player games, open world games, there's that like X amount of hours. You can tack on a number, and it's like that's the space you could play with this game. But no one's like Call of Duty multiplayer, 300 hours, like period dot. There's only 300 hours of content in Call of Duty multiplayer, right? Like that's not how it works. You just
No.
play until you're too bored or too mad, or both, and then you play something
Yeah.
else. Yeah.
it's accurate.
And I mean, people don't really have a problem throwing some money at like skins or whatever when they play that, so that like factors into the price even more.
Mhm.
Like, oh, I put 800 hours in Diablo 4, maybe I'll buy a skin. So that's like on top of the price that they ask for. I don't know. It's
That's exactly my mindset. Like, when I play a game like Hunt Showdown or Counter Strike or something that I maybe paid $20, $30 for, but I'm hundreds of hours in, I'm much more likely to buy their battle pass and be like, hey, here's a little bit more support. I want this game to continue. So that's always been my mindset too, is like, if I'm enjoying it, I will invest in the battle pass, or if there is no battle pass, I'll do like a skin or something here and there, just so that I feel like I can continue to contribute to a community that I enjoy,
Right.
no matter how toxic it is. Looking at you, Counter Strike.
Mhm.
So,
But you look at those two, and skins or battle passes, like you buy 6 of them, and that's a copy of The Witcher 3.
or you buy
Yeah.
one skin in Valorant, and that's like 3 copies of The Witcher 3.
Are they that expensive in in Valorant?
Yeah,
say.
gun
Witcher
skins are like
3's
between 40 and 80 each.
it's like at the
I
same
thought
time,
Overwatch sucked.
playing devil's advocate here, you put thousands of hours into Valorant and say like 200 into The Witcher.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm just all saying this from a perspective of somebody who's I'm trying to look at it from a different angle, because I don't really I don't think any of us really look at time and games the same way anymore. So it's weird.
Well,
I
Austin, you play World of Warcraft as well, so like
yeah, I did
both
want to
of
ask
us
about
just
that.
have no leg to stand on hours
Yeah.
wise.
Right. Yeah. Don't all 3 of you have like literally a month of playtime at least in WoW?
Dude,
So-
that's like
months
so when I
nothing.
quit,
Yeah.
all right, here's my
What's
badge
under
of
this
shame.
guy?
Here's my badge of shame. When I quit after either Pandaria or Cataclysm, my main character, which was a protection warrior, 475 days of playtime.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That's
And that's just one character. I
lot.
had alts that I leveled
Yeah.
up all the
Right.
way and rated
Oh
with
yeah.
and all that
My
stuff.
main dude was
so-
well over a year of playtime.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah,
World
a
of
month.
Warcraft's just like
month.
like
Listen to this
MMOs
guy.
are just a whole
month.
nother beast.
I don't know. I can't measure time, obviously.
WoW during the peak was like, I'm gonna wake up and this is literally my day. I'm gonna be awake for 16 hours. I'm gonna be logged in for 16 hours.
It was my weekend.
Doesn't mean I'm playing it the whole time. Like a lot of times it was tabbed, like I was doing something else, or I was just
Yeah.
bullshitting with somebody. Like I wasn't
You're
actually
flying
playing.
somewhere and playing Peggle from one of the mods.
Like it was just always on, and I just like doing something else.
Well,
Yeah.
the difference too for me, and the reason I quit was that I was talking to people in World of Warcraft all day, every day.
Yep, that
And
was
so
a lot of it.
you form those friendships as well. That is, you don't do that with a single player game, right? So
No,
that's ultimately what keeps you coming back. Is like the community.
WoW
Those
is
days,
quite literally a lifestyle.
Yeah.
if you take it seriously enough.
Yeah, just watch the South Park episode.
Mhm.
Completely accurate.
No, I mean, because I think WoW is a good example of that kind of game where it's like, yeah, you can spend, what was that, 478
and
whole
that was
days.
years ago.
And that was years ago, and I went back to classic, and
Right, but like you said, Auden, that's not 478 days of like I'm clicking and I'm playing, I'm raiding, right? Like
No, not
you're
totally.
just sometimes you're just sitting there bullshitting with people. It's more of a social experience than a video game, right? Like a hardcore, like I'm gonna play video game, which also again just kind of muddies the waters with like what is a quality of an hour of game time to you? Because like an hour of raiding is very different from an hour of just sitting around with people and doing dance emotes.
Sitting in Orgrimmar, doing nothing.
Yeah.
doing a train around the entire city. Good
Yeah.
times.
Moonguard RP is definitely worth the $15 a month.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Oh man,
You get an
Fun,
RP servers, yeah, that's a whole
Moonguard's
other.
the best. Moonguard's like the main role playing server in WoW. It's so good.
Yeah.
It's so fun. Like people would there's a guild on there that's the Stormwind Guard, and Stormwind's the main capital human city in WoW. And they would just get the armor that looks just like the regular guards patrolling, and like they'd go around, they'd issue people tickets, and like talk to people, and like try to arrest people and investigate stuff. And like obviously there's other RP people that are like trying to do some like illegal shit and dark and nefarious stuff. Like I'll never forget, it's like because I eventually we're like, fuck it, I'm exclusively playing on this server. I may not participate, but I'm observing all of this.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And I was running through an area, and I remember seeing one of these dark guild people. I can't remember what even the group was, but they were like out in the middle of the woods, and I saw a conversation happening, and it was with a Stormwind Guard person. I was like, oh shit, that dude's on the take. He's in on it. He's like, he's part of it. Like, he has infiltrated the guard. It's good
Well, and
stuff.
you had people who were infamous on servers too.
Yeah.
You know, there was like a documentary a couple of years ago, at least on YouTube, of like this one dude that was just going around killing people on one server, and everybody knew who he was. If you saw him coming, it was like, oh fuck it, I don't have a chance.
Yeah.
It was in the wetlands, right? Like he'd stick around the docks, people would get off the boat, and he'd just like stab them in the back, and they couldn't kill him.
Yeah.
This is some South Park shit.
Yeah.
Don't walk into the inn in Goldshire expecting to see some drinking. I mean, you can expect drinking, but like
exclusively people ERPing.
Yes, that is the place, and especially look out for Worgen. You know.
Yeah. I remember thinking back then when I was in, God, this is probably high school or maybe it was college, thinking it was like the funniest thing to go in there and act like Chris Hansen, like walking on a room to people and start the script.
That's good. But I mean,
As I
RPing.
said, everybody enjoys their time a little differently.
Exactly. But like RPing does add just a whole extra layer, right?
Yeah.
To all, like, I mean, if you want to see another rabbit hole of it, like just Google like GTA RP. Yeah, that shit is just like a whole other, like, you can get all your money's worth from that, right?
Whole subculture.
Yeah.
So that's what's that's why this is such a hard topic. There's no answer. It's completely up to the individual. the variety in games is wild. Like if we're talking about like time, like how people expect or want time out of like a mobile game is very different. Do I want something that is very long or takes me forever? No, probably not.
You
Most
sure?
of the time.
I think probably one of the
in total, probably.
Yeah.
probably one of the best examples that I'm hoping all of us have played is the Order 1886. In this whole discussion, you haven't.
Well, it's a
I
bad
know.
game, but
No,
yeah.
I know what you're getting at, though. I
Yeah.
think it's pretty
In
clear.
terms of, I mean, it was really, to me, it was unique. I thought that the story was interesting, gameplay was lacking, and ultimately it was short enough that I was wanting more. But it seems to be the one that, at least over the last 10-ish years, has been the
Dude, I'd love to have more
The one
games
that
like that. Where it's a AAA level visual fidelity, because that was the thing. Like the big
It was
thing with Order.
gorgeous.
It's still a good looking game.
There are games out right now that don't even match
short.
like how it looks
Yeah.
today.
But I would love to have more that has that level of polish. But it's only a few hours or several hours. Like they're just really telling you a tight story of whatever.
Yeah.
That'd be fucking rad. I'd be way for that.
more alternate history shit, please, too. Thank you.
Yeah. One thing that kind of struck me too, while we're talking about just like the dichotomy between single and multiplayer games, right? Is that so here when we talk about single player games, we describe Order 1886 as what, like a 3-hour game, and it's like the hours is a direct correlation to, for most people, it's a direct correlation to their perception of the quality of the game, right?
Yeah.
Like when they say, oh,
Yeah.
it's a 90-hour adventure, I'm in, like, because I like all that content, right?
I wouldn't
But-
necessarily say quality. I'd say
Right.
it's usually for like what's the value of it.
Yeah, value
Yeah.
judgment, I
Comes
think, is
at- yeah.
the better. Yeah, not quality, but the value
If I
judgment.
buy
right?
this, how much am I getting out of it?
Yeah.
Basically.
Right. But with multiplayer games, like I'm thinking like MOBAs, shooters, competitive games like those, whenever hours comes into the discussion, it's usually more of a expression of expertise.
Yeah.
You know?
I think
Like,
there's an
I have-
assumption that I should be able to play this for hundreds of hours.
Well, but also when people
There's
bring
that,
up,
but also
like,
if
I've played-
I'm someone who's played Counter-Strike for 800 hours and there's somebody who's just starting or they're only 30 hours in, I'm immediately considered better than them,
yeah, because
whether or not I actually am.
yeah, there's like a skill judgment there, or there's an
Yeah.
expertise and knowledge judgment to it, as opposed to like I don't immediately think, wow, Rutledge got his money's worth out of that.
Yeah.
That's not my first go-to. My go-to is like, wow, he knows about grenade smoke patterns probably.
Yeah.
Like,
But I mean, like I think that's part of it. It's like there's just an assumption of it's a multiplayer game. Yeah, like I should be able to replay it. I should be able to play quite a bit of it,
right.
because that's the point of it, right? So at that point, you're getting down to what's the gameplay like and what do I like about that.
Mhm.
Although now we're getting into what's the battle pass like, what's the progression like, what's the microtransactions like. It's like fuck this modern gaming.
Much of
world,
the
dude.
cases.
Yeah,
sucks.
are the skins good?
I'm starting to think, since it's relevant right now, Evo's going on, and I'm thinking like, if we're talking, if we look at bang for your buck and we like get rid of our biases, then like fighting games seems like
Yeah.
the ultimate bang for your buck, because
There's-
these people play
yeah.
nothing but like Street Fighter or Dragon Ball Fighters, and
Oh yeah.
for $60 they have like something that they'll probably play for years and years and years on end, and almost nothing
Yeah.
but. It's kind of crazy.
Until
Yeah,
Street Fighter
that's-
7. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
but
it's
that
an interesting
experience
thing.
carries over, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, because like
So-
if there's gosh, I wish I could remember where I remember watching this and talking with people about it. Is that like there's a reason that fighting games became within like a what's the right way to frame this, in particularly in cities and like poorer areas, like why they became so popular is because if one dude had a console and some controllers in this game, we're all fucking good to go for a while. Like it's entertainment for a good chunk of people for a long time. And so fighting games became like hugely popular because of that, because there's so much, it's kind of endless in the content with how much you can learn and do, because you always improve. And it's always, you can get more people involved in it.
Mhm.
It's kind of like
It
Halo
was a
1
pretty
too.
cheap option.
Like pre-Xbox Live, there would be 2 people that had the Xbox, and you would just get your whole friend group together for
Yeah.
an entire Saturday and play together on just 2
Yeah.
consoles. And
Mhm.
I had friends who didn't have Xboxes, but they had their own controllers, And when we got together for LANs, they brought their controllers, and that was just like the stuff we did every weekend.
Right.
Yeah.
This is going to be a weird tangent, but I want to take you all with me on this. So, Austin bringing up Evo just made me think. So I have Street Fighter 6, and I haven't played it since it launched because I've just been so busy, and then like other games have been coming out and stuff. And I keep meaning to get back to it. I do want to, but I'm thinking in terms of that is a game that I have. Well, I didn't buy it. I did get a copy, right? But I'm thinking like if I had bought it, the amount of hours I've played so far, not I don't know if I would say it's like bang for your buck for me right now, right? Like there's so many more hours I do want to play, right?
Yeah.
But my understanding of the game's mechanics are way better than if I had not played any of Street Fighter 6.
Mhm.
And now when I watch Evo, I do get a lot of enjoyment out of it because I'm like, I have been in that situation and I know how skilled these people are when they're it's kind of like when you really understand like it's the difference between someone who's never seen football in their life and someone who was like a high school coach for football, right? Like they know the ins and outs. So there's this appreciation that you get when you know these competitive games better. Like in the same way with like, right, if you watch a Counter-Strike tournament, you are going to pick up on a lot more details than I would, right?
Yeah.
So I guess
You start to pay attention to kind of the tactics that become meta.
right.
Is what it comes down to. Like you're watching professionals do stuff you've also tried to perfect.
Exactly. And so what I'm getting at is there's an esports or like a let's play or watching tournaments kind of component here where your value isn't even directly tied to how many hours, like the hours you're playing in the game, but kind of the hours outside of when you play the game, when you watch others, you know? But that's not something I think about at all when I'm thinking about buying a game. I'm not thinking like I'm going to buy Call of Duty 20 this year. So when I watch MLG pro gamers, I will understand their tactics better. That's not even something I factor into, but it is something that I do benefit from when I buy a game.
I think it's a big part of why Twitch has grown the way it's grown too. Is a lot of people go to these streams to see people showcasing tactics maybe they didn't think of, or really just absorbing more of the games that they enjoy or they liked, and see different perspectives too. So like there's this whole other kind of subculture of gaming now that you've got the game, but then you've got the community and the streamers and the content creators and like all of that stuff that ties into just a single game that you bought.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah,
it's
and-
pretty crazy.
What you described, Robert, is kind of what I've been feeling watching Evo as well. It's like, I bought the game. I feel better about my purchase watching it because I feel like I'm more a part of the community. Like I can go in and like try this stuff out myself. And like you said, I'm starting to look at these fights in a different way than before. Starting to see like drive impacts. Not a lot of people use them as much as I do in the game because I think it's good, but apparently it's really easy to punish.
100%.
And yeah, and so it's just really interesting to see and to learn. And I'm like, well, next time I go and play the game, then I'll know how to play better. Hopefully, it's a lot of fun.
But that's not a value judgment you made when you were like, I want to purchase Street Fighter 6. You're not thinking
That's exactly what I was about to say.
Mhm.
That's the thing. It's like
It's
you're
not,
not.
but
It's
I
not
feel
like
better
so
about
I
my
watch
purchase,
Evo.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a
Yeah.
hidden benefit. It's a secret. It's a
Yeah.
bonus stage of buying a video game.
Yeah, it's one of those things that you luck into. I mean, it may be some. I mean, like, so bringing up something like Street Fighter, like, because the community already has existed for 30 years now. Like, that one's a little different. Like, you kind of know what you're buying into if that's what you're into. But that is an interesting point of like there are so much things that are outside of a game that it's you can't really one you might not know about. You like just stumble into it because some games just become these big things like
Delta.
Skyrim becoming much bigger than what it was. Like it was the game, but then it's got this humongous modding culture
Right.
that has helped make it last. They won't let it fucking die. Just let it die.
We're what,
No,
12
no.
years in now on Skyrim?
Oh yeah, 11. Everybody knows when that came out.
Mhm. That was when Starfield was going to try to come out too,
Yeah.
and then it didn't.
No.
I remember where I was on 11/11/11. I
Wow.
was sitting my ass down in my room playing the game.
Did you make a wish on 11/11?
No, because actually school was out that day, so it was a pretty good day.
Nice.
Yeah.
I want to say it was around Veterans Day. It was pretty close to
yeah.
a holiday.
Yeah. I think 11/11 is Veterans Day, isn't it?
Maybe.
I think
Might
so.
be.
Yeah.
Either
Because
way.
I don't think that one's tied
I
to
can
like
barely keep track of the holidays I have off.
fair.
So
Yeah. Not every place gets Veterans Day off. That's definitely a company call.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's just so much external. Like, it doesn't have to be a competitive like online game either. It could be like speed runs, right? Like, there are people who watch or do Ocarina of Time speed runs and like
Mario
randomizers.
64 is still incredibly popular for speedrunning.
and that's something where I mean we were all probably like pretty young, so our value judgment of how much we paid for Ocarina of Time or Mario 64 probably isn't as relevant, right? But there's still that
my
idea
dad paid
of
for it.
yeah, exactly. But there's still that idea of now that experience and time, the hours played of Zelda has contributed to your enjoyment of hours not played,
Yeah.
right? Outside of it.
Well, let's get even weirder with this conversation.
Yeah.
Of
Oh,
like,
boy.
let's say that because I played Ocarina of Time and I have an understanding of how this type of game works, and I'm like, oh, I see how these mechanics go together, and I really like how that works. And then I play a totally different game, and I can appreciate and like that game more because I played another game in the past. Now, what do you do?
Inception.
It's just never ending. It's
Yeah.
kind of like what I was talking about with our very wrong, not endorsed by TechRaptor opinions of our tabletop editor Giaco about Tears of the Kingdom, and how wrong he is about it. That part of the enjoyment that I get, and I think that a lot of people that are way into games and think about them, like try to think about them critically, not just like consume them, which there's nothing wrong with that, but like that's what we're into. What's so great about Tears of the Kingdom is because of how it plays with mechanics, and you start thinking like, holy shit, like they're doing like cool stuff with game design and that kind of things.
Mhm.
And obviously, probably your average person not thinking about that.
Right.
So it's an interesting thing to think about how other games you have played affect the game that you're playing now, and the value that I would attribute to it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that also just ties into, like you're saying, there are people who play games to have fun critiquing it and
Yeah.
people who just consume games. I feel like people who consume games maybe don't think about that as much, right? I
No,
don't
obviously not.
I don't think they're worried about it or
Yeah.
really consider it.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of in that same wheelhouse where, like, like I said earlier, like I think for most of us here, we won't be as like, oh, I paid $60 and I didn't enjoy the game. What a waste of money, right? Like that's
Yeah.
probably not how we're
Yeah.
gonna think, right?
I can't
Yeah.
think of the last time I thought like that after playing a game I didn't enjoy.
Well, let
It's
me
just
put
like,
it to you
oh,
this
well, that's a
way.
bummer, and then move on.
I bought Dishonored 2 Collector's Edition. I still haven't played it, and I don't think I wasted the money.
Okay, well, I was gonna say, yeah,
It's,
no,
it's
that
a
game
nice
is
shelf
amazing.
piece.
Corvo's
Hey, I'll buy
mask
it
is
off you.
somewhere.
Yeah.
Is it up
Mhm.
there?
Is it up there somewhere? No.
Yeah,
Put it
well,
on.
you can't see it, but it's on the very top. It's up there.
hmm one thing I do want to take this conversation to is we've talked a lot about multiplayer games, talked a lot about single player games, but there's a certain type of single player game or like kind of different types where I want to drive us to, and they're the kind of games where like the best way I can describe them are like endless games, where like roguelikes, farming sims,
Vampire
right? Like
Survivors.
Vampire Survivors. There's no ending to these. There's no you've rolled credits and you can put down the game forever and never think about it again, right? They're the classic like just one more play, one more day, one more run through it, right?
Yeah.
And those ones follow kind of a similar formula like multiplayer games where the number of hours you can play, there's no number you can really attach to like Stardew Valley. Stardew Valley is not an X hour experience. It's a lifestyle kind of.
Yeah.
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 Yeah,
Yes.
those are tricky because, yeah, I mean, in most cases, it's never ending. You just keep adding more to your skill set or unlocking more, or, in
Mhm.
Vampire Survivors example, just one more update, add 9 more achievements, another character, bunch of weapons, like
Mhm.
Yeah, director's
Uh,
cut. Can't wait.
director's cut.
I
Yeah,
think-
it's crazy.
I think roguelikes is probably where the discussion gets more purely about if we're really wanting to get into the nitty gritty of what's a good game. I think that conversation happens more frequently there. Because obviously you can play them forever, but if that gameplay loop is not satisfying and not well made, they're not going to play it that long.
Yep.
So then the discussion all becomes about whether that gameplay loop is good, and like the time thing isn't as big of a thing because like okay, if the gameplay loop's not good, people aren't going to play it that
Yeah.
long.
Right.
And so that's probably where we get most of the like pure discussions of like, is this a good game for what we would consider of actual reasons more often than not just how long it is
Yeah.
of what makes a good game.
And what's
I think-
crazy to think about too is like some of these have been like genre defining games. Like Stardew Valley, definitely kind of a genre defining game for the most part. When you talk about a farming sim, most people's first reaction is Stardew Valley.
Yeah.
Made by one dude. Vampire Survivors started a whole wave of roguelikes made by one dude.
Okay, well, I gotta stop you there.
but it's
not
because of-
roguelike. It's a survivor-like now.
Survivor-like,
actually? or
apologies.
something like that.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
even know anymore. But
They're all
it's
roguey
because
wogies.
it wasn't
Yep.
the team size, it wasn't who the developer was. It all came down to gameplay.
Yeah, I mean,
You know-
gameplay is king.
What's interesting now that we're talking about Vampire Survivors in particular is that the developer used to work on like gambling machines, and he tried to make it like the feeling of a gambling game or machine without like having to spend like copious amounts of money. I'm probably not getting it totally correct, but I know that he worked on like gambling machines and he tried to like emulate that feeling of winning and getting a whole bunch. And you see that in the game itself. Like when you open a chest, there's like tons of gold and it's very flashy, like a slot machine.
Like it literally roulette's like a slot, like the
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the game was $3. I bought it for $3 because that's just what it was at the time. Now it's
Me too.
$5, and like again,
Inflation, man.
Well, yeah, I mean it's killer. But like again, if I'm just trying to put my head in the space of, well, did I get my value for the money? Then like absolutely, because I put 70 hours into it already. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, like Vampire Survivor might be the one game where I'm like we always like most of the time we're like just get Game Pass, right, for something. And Vampire Survivor I think is still on Game Pass, or there was a time where it was, and that might be the one game
is.
where I'm like,
It is.
if that's
Just
all you want to
actually buy
play,
it.
do not buy Game Pass. Just buy the game.
Yeah.
Just buy the game
Yeah.
itself.
It's a cheap ass game. It's like one of the best if we're talking about value for money games
Yeah.
out there.
It's crazy because he just keeps releasing free
Yeah,
updates.
he'll just keep adding shit to it.
He's
And
like,
there's
I had
some
another
DLC.
idea, just pushes a new round
And
of
there's
code.
this
and
whole
boom.
director's cut thing floating around that's totally different. That's being like talked about, and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
I want that. Give me that.
No, Vampire Survivor is it's the king of this conversation in a way, right?
Yeah,
purely.
If it's a game you have to pay for, not like we're talking about like a free thing where you could technically
Skyrim of the
play for
genre.
whatever.
on every platform.
Yeah.
No, it's not. Don't sully it by comparing to Skyrim.
Just
But
in the
it's-
fact that it's on like every platform now.
Oh well.
Well, so is
I'm sure
Minecraft.
somebody's
Oh,
modded it onto
yeah,
a refrigerator by now.
You could
I
call it the
want it on
Minecraft of the
Alexa.
genre.
Okay, I can stomach that a little more than the gross Skyrim
Yeah.
reference.
Okay,
But-
I sorry, I don't agree.
No, Skyrim.
Do we want to have a conversation
Let's
about Fallout
change this
3 or
entirely to
Fallout 3.
Skyrim and how
Okay.
awful of a game it is.
No.
Well, here's an interesting thing with
Starfield's gonna
Skyrim.
suck. Anyway,
Let's say you're paying $60. Let's take sales out of it or whatever, right? So you're paying $60 for Skyrim.
poor sap, but yeah.
Sure. Isn't it kind of weird that paying $60 for it on the PlayStation or PS3? Let's go back to PS3. Paying $60 for it on PS3 feels like less value than paying $60 for it on PC because of mods.
Yeah.
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 And PS3 had that one glitch where the save file keeps getting bigger and bigger. So eventually, once you play too many hours, the game just doesn't work anymore.
That's actually a mercy killing. That's a good feature. That's Sony's on top again. The PlayStation advantage right there.
It's the PlayStation advantage. You can't see underwater.
Uh,
Yeah.
You know what's interesting and I don't know how I feel about this. I'm sure you guys will have feelings, but I think I've bought Skyrim like 3 times by now.
Same.
I bought it
And-
once, and I do regret that one.
I what's wrong with you?
It's not. It sucks. Anyway,
Otten doesn't like climbing mountains.
He doesn't
I
like
don't
my
know. I would
jumping.
love to do. I would love to try to do it. We should do a talk about all the Elder Scrolls, or actually just Bethesda made games, not Bethesda published games, but Bethesda
we gotta get
software
Fallout?
developed games, and how
Yeah.
bad they are.
Ooh, we
Okay.
should do that right before what's it?
Before
Starfield comes out.
Starfield.
Yeah, if we're talking about these long ass games that like feel like they're trying to slowly suffocate me, that would be it.
Okay. You know
Yeah,
what? That's
I'm
what we'll
down.
do that week.
Yeah. So
Honestly,
the
I think that could be a hell of a podcast.
The-
You know, that's
Oh.
gonna be like PAX week though. So
That
I
yeah,
wa-
that's what I was gonna.
and we're
it's
gonna be
packed
there
out.
in
shit, yeah.
person
That's right.
together. That could be pretty spicy, actually.
Mm.
We could
I
make
better
that
see
happen.
fists flying.
We might be throwing hands.
Yeah. All right.
Wow.
Yeah. We'll figure it out. This will be after pod talk. We can figure that out.
Yeah.
I don't know. One point I did want to make with roguelikes too, with because I mean like Vampire Survivor, I wouldn't really call that. I mean it has roguelike elements, right? But
It's a roguey wogie.
It's
Come on.
it's a roguey wogie.
it's a roguey wogie. But
Yeah.
so
Roguey
with
wogie.
those, like they don't really have an ending, but a lot of them do have kind of like it's like if you're driving down a highway, there are exit ramps, and it's like
Mhm.
you
Yeah,
choose
the
to pass.
yeah.
You choose which ones you want to pass by. Like I think of Hades, right? So Hades like is you beat the game once, and that can be your exit ramp. You can be like, I've gotten
kill
what I needed.
Hades, and you're good to go.
Right, but then you realize, oh, there's more story here. There's
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
So then you have to kill Hades 9 more times to get like the true ending. If I remember right, that could be your next exit ramp. But then they have that heat
But
system.
wait, there's more.
There's a heat system where you can keep bumping up the difficulty to keep testing your
Yeah.
metal. And there's like I think 33 levels of heat. There's a lot. Like it's like 30 something.
It's a lot.
And so that's just another layer of like which one's your exit ramp, right? And I think it's just depending on what that is for you determines the value judgment of Hades for you, you know?
Yeah.
Man, Hades 2 is gonna be nuts. I can already see it
Yeah.
because they have to one up themselves probably, and
No, they don't.
I mean,
Well,
Make the same quality game. I'm good.
See,
Not
they
gonna
don't
add
have
anything.
to,
Whole new story, whole area,
But-
new areas, weapons.
but this is
have to.
super giant, right? They're not going to sit on their laurels. They're not going to
No,
just
Yeah.
That's the first time they've done a sequel.
they don't do
so,
sequels,
yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
So they have to do something special.
Yeah. And like, I mean, just look at their catalog, right? There's no way they're going to be like, we'll just ship it. Who cares? We'll ship out the basic. They're not like that, right? So
I don't
it's
know.
going to be something.
Hades
See that-
2, Hadeser.
The point you're making with Hades of how there's technically all this extra stuff. Lots of games have so much of this extra stuff that like you complete the main objective, whatever that's story based or whatever it is, or you made it to kill the
Yeah, they're
boss.
called
thing,
achievements.
kind of thing. Achievements are a plague on this industry. But I don't know. This is why this is. I feel like we're gonna end this and be like, we didn't answer anything. All right, let's move on because there's no answer to
There's
any
no
of this.
answer.
There is
No.
no answer. Absolutely
Um,
not.
There's so many different factors, and it's such a weird way to try to compare things.
Yeah.
Because as someone who now takes care of children, time to me is very valuable.
Mhm.
Like to put it in perspective, most of my free time I've tried to play Jedi Survivor, and I only just finished.
That came out in
since it came
April.
out.
Proud of
Yeah.
you, kiddo.
To be
Yeah.
fair, in between there, I did play Final Fantasy 16 through.
That's a long one.
Yeah, that is-
So,
I mean, it's like that point you were making before we hit record here, where we're trying to it's commodifying art,
Yeah.
right? And we're trying to judge the commodification of something so subjective,
yeah,
right?
of enjoyment. It's like, how do we objectively quantify or qualitatively talk about enjoyment? Like, because what enjoyment for anybody is different, and
Yeah.
my time is different. What I have available is different. The money I have is different. What I like is different. It's so fucking dumb. That's such a weird. That's when people get these focused on like, well, this game is only 15 hours. It's like, dude, I remember thinking like Mass Effect 2 was like 20 something. I was like, fucking yes, that's great. That's amazing. So it's such a weird. It's why like I think the default thing for people that are like us or that have been around for a while, is always just find someone whose taste you like.
Yep.
Don't be like, how long is this? Don't let that be the first question you ask. Is how long is this thing? Because then I'll just fucking shut up, you moron. Like, ask a better question.
Yeah.
Like,
Focus on quality before length. Like I think in all of it, length doesn't constitute quality. Quality doesn't
But
constitute.
I think that length for some people is a very fair question, because if I'm someone that's like, oh, I know I have fairly limited time, and like, oh, this game is 60 hours to just get it done. Like, you want to have a whole thing, you want to complete the story or get the main objective done. I'll be like, ugh, maybe I don't want to do that. I want to have more experiences instead of being stuck on one forever, even if it's the greatest game ever, like kind of thing.
Yeah,
So,
like for me, the only time I ever consider length is, am I going to be able to beat this game in time for the embargo? Like, no, it's not
where's our
something
Baldur's
that
Gate
most
3
people
Yeah,
review?
where's our
about.
Baldur's Gate
What the
3
hell?
review, man?
Gonna do 70 hours in 24? How could you?
I'll go back to the pits and
Doesn't it
Drink
have like
goblin
slave
170
away,
hours of cutscenes or something?
Something like
It's
that.
just a long
wild.
game.
Yeah.
A playthrough is like 100 to 75 to 100 hours or something. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. That's
Yeah,
probably
like-
on the lower end, to be honest.
Yeah, Baldur's Gate 3 kind of is what sparked the idea for this episode, because that is definitely, it's a game that's banking itself on like, look at how many hours.
Oh, Original
it is,
Sin
but-
2 was already like a 100-hour fucking game, and this is bigger.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm
So,
fully
This has been in the
expecting
works
it
for
to
what,
be a
like
long
10
time.
years?
Baldur's
Like
Gate
that?
3?
I thought I saw somebody tweet like that
No,
they
no.
started
think so.
development on it 10 years
Well,
ago.
started means like, I wrote on a piece of paper, we're gonna make this.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We want to
it's
make
true.
a
I mean,
Baldur's Gate again.
Yeah,
it's been in early access since
it's been in early access for
2020.
3
Yeah.
years. Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
just been like the first act. So I'm sure they probably put a lot of effort into the first act when they released it to make sure that was good experience in early access. So, I mean, I could see it being 10 years.
But I mean, I think that's just the difficult part of this whole conversation, right? Which I mean, unfortunately, yes, you just listened to an hour of us saying, kind of up to you, bro. It's just like your opinion, man.
I'm
But
sure
that,
some people are going to connect with some of our opinions, and other people are going to connect with other opinions. I think it's just one of those things that
Yeah, some people are right.
the
some
gaming
people are wrong.
community is so, I don't know, diverse at the end of the day that everybody's got a different concept of pretty much everything.
yeah, and I think that's kind of part of it, right? Is there's no real way to boil it down to like a game must be 3 hours per dollar. Like there's no magic formula. There's no.
No,
You
but
know,
it's an interesting thing to think about of this diversity of people that play games. That the people that bring up this hours of that I get out of game, I mean, we're kind of talking about one group of people, are we not? You know what I'm saying?
The gamers.
The capital G gamers.
Capital
Oh,
G
no.
gamers.
Those are the guys that are usually whining about how long or short a game is, or like, oh, the devs are so lazy, it's only this long. And it's like, you guys are so stupid.
They happen to be the
Like-
same ones that are like, there's only 3 good games to play, or
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think when we're talking about commodification of art, like there's like all art has been commodified because we live in a capitalist society, et cetera, et cetera. But like when you think of like I think of live music as a great kind of interesting other example that I mean I don't think we need to dive into it a lot, but it's one where money plays a big role in how much you are allowed to enjoy live music, right? You pay up front. Like some tickets are $15 if you're going to your local bar. Other tickets are literally $1,200 if you want to see Taylor Swift in a stadium,
I
right?
was
Like,
just about to say that.
Mhm.
yeah, and
And
that's
then you're surrounded by Taylor Swift fans.
And then,
I mean,
well,
here
and then
in-
you've got things like festivals and the
Yeah.
different tiers within
Yeah.
that. Like it's
Mhm.
it's crazy.
and then here in Seattle, that Taylor Swift show, they fucking caused an earthquake. Like literally a 2.3. It's a 2.3 on the magnitude, but that's still
Still.
like
It's still an earthquake.
yeah.
That's insane.
It's nuts, yeah. But then I also think of like if you're just walking down the street and like there's a local busker playing, you can consume, quote unquote, consume that
Yeah.
content for free,
Throw 'em
but
some
then
money.
you can tip them, right? And that is a judgment that you're making yourself, where
Here's-
it's up to you.
You're a music guy, so does it ever come up with like, oh, this album is only X minutes long? This is bullshit. I purchased this. I guess it's not as big of a thing anymore because I know like people aren't like buying CDs and shit anymore.
Yeah.
So like they're
Huh.
not purchasing albums as much anymore. But I
Mhm.
wonder if that was ever like, oh, this is only 35 minutes. What the fuck? Like
Yeah, I
that'd be a
feel
short album, but like
it's a shorter
it would be
album.
pretty short.
It's more like
but
EP, but I feel like Spotify has killed that because
yeah,
like
it's kind of
Oh,
killed
yeah.
the whole.
right because like if it's only 30 minutes, great. I'll
Although
move
I
on to
wonder,
the next
because
stream.
I know this is not like people that are like really into music don't even read these very often. I know it's a pretty niche thing, but like there are like album review, like people do review those. I
Mhm.
really wonder if that. I doubt it does among critics though, that it comes up. Very
Yeah, because
often,
I feel
but
like with
I'd be
music, like
curious.
that's where quality is king, right? It's like even if the album is 20 minutes, I've always heard like a lot of hardcore albums are like kind of shorter. They're usually like EP length, and
Yeah,
still it's like no one's like, I wish it were 20 minutes longer, right? Like it's
yeah.
just you like the way it sounds, right? And
I was just
that's
curious because it's very. I'd say the closest we're getting is that people are starting to get that with movies. They're like, movies are getting too long. Like I'm in
kind
the theater too long. Like
Yeah.
that's it's getting that way. It's the only other thing that's having a similar discussion to games.
hmm
I think those people are wrong, but
I mean, give
uh,
us an intermission at least, though, man.
no,
A little
Yes.
bathroom break, you know,
Yeah.
like all right, everyone, to the
plan
bathrooms.
better. That's your own fucking fault.
Fair.
Didn't
Um,
Two Towers have an intermission when it came
Nope.
out?
It better have. My God, that'd be too
No,
long.
I've never seen
don't
maybe
think
at
you-
your local theater, but like
That's what I meant.
I've never
yeah.
seen a
I'm
Lord
trying
of the
to
Rings
remember.
with an intermission.
Oof. But I do
I just
think, I
remember
mean,
going through like 2 bags of popcorn on that one. So
if we're talking about
bro.
album length, though, I do think
Thanks.
there, in album length, there was a time I feel like it was when I was like way young. We were all way younger, so I feel like this might just be like one of those weird like fake memories. But I think there's that same excitement of like when you saw like a CD album and it was 2 discs. There's the same excitement gamers get when it's like, whoa, Final Fantasy is like 4 discs. Hell yeah, dude.
Sweet, there's a ton of. I could see that. Like, oh shit, there's a lot of tracks. Like,
Yeah.
there's maybe there's a higher chance I'll really like a few of them or something like that.
Mhm.
yeah. Huh.
That's just kind of a basic thing I get. That in general, if we get more for the thing, our initial reaction is like fucking sweet. Like, I got more out of the money that I put into it than I thought.
Unless it's Assassin's Creed.
Well,
Yeah.
now we know better. Now, if
That
you're
has
getting
diminishing
into those, you
returns.
know, because all these. That's the other thing is that like I think that we can get into it. We got into it a little bit, but like there's a big discussion among like these big AAA games like those Assassin's Creeds of being too long, being too overstuffed, and there's kind of a little bit of a snapback going the other way now.
Mhm.
Not a big one, but
Mhm.
like there's a lot more discussion about it. That a lot of that was pushed big time by the companies themselves and the marketing themselves. Like, oh, this game is 4 times bigger than the last one, or this game it'll take you however long to beat, or like so many things like that where it was really pushing the discussion too of like the implication in the marketing is it's longer therefore better,
Yeah.
and then people globbed onto that some, I think, and that
Listen, it
that
takes
made
like
the discussion
22
bigger.
hours to walk from one end of Morrowind to the other.
Mm. And that's gameplay, baby.
Yeah,
That's gaming.
Morrowind's the last good Elder Scrolls game.
Mm.
All right, you know what? We'll talk it out in like a week or
Bethesda
something.
games are just
and
so
see how he does.
polarizing.
Did you
for our
guys hear
team,
about
it's
the
phenomenal.
Oblivion is supposedly getting a remaster? What a fucking trash game to waste your time on. That's the worst one. It
Okay.
sucks. It is the worst.
We're getting a sneak preview of
They
the
killed
Bethesda
Patrick
episode.
Stewart off immediately, and then the game went to shit immediately.
I don't even know if that was like even confirmed. It was like a
You know-
Reddit rumor.
You know
On-
the
on- okay,
Oblivion
so-
gates and how bad they are? That was the worst. I remember being excited to be like, oh, what's weird shit's going on here? And then I just wanted to die.
Well, you were
Look.
already basically in hell, so
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
I
was.
love an
Playing the
Oblivion
game.
remake, but
wouldn't.
on Unreal Engine 5, it's just gonna be like devoid of any soul. And believe
What?
me, believe me,
stop, criminal scum.
Look, part
That's
of
what I
the
say to
fun
Bethesda when
is
they
the
release the
jank
game.
from the creation engine or whatever the hell they have it running on. Like,
Mm,
I
yeah.
want to be able to walk up the side of very steep mountains and watch my horse float away and shit, you know?
I mean, I'm neither for nor against Unreal, but I feel like if you are gonna remake Oblivion, it has to be on the creation. It has like
It has to be janky.
Yeah.
It does like I firmly believe that no one makes Oblivion or Skyrim. They just exist in the engine and people discover them, you know? They only work in those frames, you know? Same with Starfield. Starfield, I mean, it's going to be on the creation engine, an improved creation engine over like, Fallout 3 and Skyrim, but
I want to
same
go to
engine.
some giant ass space city with a dome and find a way to gradually climb a skyscraper to get all the way to the top.
Hmm.
Or just
On a
like
s- on
jump
a
I
space
down
will
it.
happily waste 3 hours doing that in a Bethesda game. It's
See,
amusing.
this is that quality versus quantity discussion right here. 3 hours of skyscraper hopping.
Listen,
Right.
I'm not
There's
going to
like-
follow the path if I can go over it.
Hmm.
There's like a ratio of jank to quality that these Bethesda games need to adhere to, you know? Like,
Yeah.
just the right amount of jank, but still a fun game at its core, which is the case with,
Which they've never achieved.
most of these
Well,
games.
we will
No.
get into all of that in a future episode of this
They've
podcast.
they've never
I feel
gotten
like
It's going to be
there.
a heated episode. I can't
feel
wait.
like that'll be a very fun one for sure. But does anyone have any final thoughts on the whole time versus money
Yeah,
versus
stop
gaming?
giving a shit about time.
Play what you love at the end of the
Just
day.
play what you like. Unless you're a use case of like, I don't have much money and I would just, I'd like this to go a little longer, or I don't have much time. Like, it really is irrelevant to you.
Yeah.
By and large.
Mhm. And I think one last point I want to make is if you don't finish a game, that is okay. If you're not having
Yeah.
fun with the game, do not feel the need to finish.
Yeah.
And really that goes
Sunk
for any
cost fallacy, man.
Yeah,
Mhm.
like books, like TV shows, whatever. Like if you're not enjoying it, life is too short to force yourself to finish a thing you're not enjoying.
Yep.
I'm
Mhm.
victim of that.
Like
Mhm.
any of the Elder Scroll games. Don't
No, well, no.
bother.
No.
Yep.
Just
Yep,
don't bother.
for sure. But I think that is a good wrap on this week's episode. It took about an hour of your time, so
Yeah.
I'd say that's worth however many dollars you think it is based on your video game time to money.
Yes.
It's definitely
ratio,
worth
though.
a like.
It's worth a like.
That's
It's
right.
worth a subscribe, and maybe even a review, depending, because everything's subjective. But I think it's worth a review. That would be very
Yeah,
helpful.
I wouldn't do it, but you guys can go ahead.
Different strokes, right? Different tastes.
Yeah.
But yeah, we would really appreciate if you left a review and let us know in the comments down below. What are your thoughts on all this, right? Because I think everyone's gonna come in with different things they value. For some people, maybe it really is straight up like the more hours, the better, right? If that's you, chime in. We would love to hear from you and know your thoughts. If you want more from us, we are at techraptor.net, where we always publish news, features, reviews, etc. But if you want more of this show, we will be back in your feed next Monday, and we'll see you then. Bye-bye.